advantage of the opportunity. But right now is about right now.
The Plan B, Ohio State Buckeyes.
Give everything you got in your heart to this place.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Rushing the Field, a college football show from NBC Sports. He's Joshua Perry. I'm Nicole Auerbach. This is Rushing the Field presented by Xfinity. Normally, we start the show, Joshua, with news and notes, but I kind of wanted to combine it this week with one of our favorite segments, WTF on RTF. Are you good with this? Are you good with this change of direction?
You know, I think it is one of the best calls from an editorial standpoint that was ever made on this show, so let's do it.
Okay, so WTF on RTF is kind of, as it sounds, something that we find a little ridiculous that we like to point out. This is maybe something that is the most ridiculous. This is something that I don't think anyone ever thought we were going to see again. I mean, even those who thought like the prophecy was foretold when he was brought back as an assistant coach. But Bobby Petrino is the interim head coach for the Arkansas Razorbacks for the rest of the year. He's back. The last time we saw Bobby Petrino as the head coach at Arkansas, he was very famously wearing the neck brace, talking about the accident, lying about having a mistress with him. A, we're past the point of shame in society. But B, Joshua, if you've had success somewhere, they might be willing to take you back at some point later on.
Yeah, I mean, it's an insane thing. Like, I think the idea that he was able to have like a redemption arc in coaching is maybe an indication that the industry is a little bit too forgiving at times. Like, what happened in that situation with him? And you mentioned like it was a motorcycle accident, and then it was all of the lying that went on afterward. And by the way, this woman was an employee of the university, which like exposes your university in so many ways to like all kinds of terrible things that can happen. Like that to me is like, okay, brother, like you got to go away and like you get to work in financial services now. Like you have to pivot. And he didn't. Like he's like, no, I'm still coaching. And now he's back at Arkansas as the interim head coach, and he wants to pursue the job on a full-time basis. And the crazy part about it is some of the names that are associated with the job as of today, which I'm not exactly sure are the names that they would go after. I think people would be the most excited about him. Like if you're an Arkansas fan, he's probably the one that gets you most excited. And that is an insane thing to me.
Let me give you this quote from Arkansas Athletic Director Hunter Yurchek. This was part of their announcement of, we are firing Sam Pittman. Bobby Petrino will be the interim head coach. And, quote, we will begin a national search for our next head coach immediately. And that search will include Coach Petrino, who has expressed his desire to be a candidate for the full-time job. That tells me that they are seriously considering it, that there's a lot of money people around this program that are interested and invested in Bobby Petrino being the head coach full-time. And this is something that people thought the second that he came back as offensive coordinator. I remember, I mean, you and I probably had this conversation, like, did Bobby Petrino or did Sam Pittman just hire his successor on the staff? Like now you have all of this dynamic with the donors and the pressure around the program when they were going to make a change. Bobby Petrino already made a bunch of staffing changes on the defensive side of the ball. Like he's acting like he is going to get this job. And that's, I guess, what you need to do as an interim. But it's pretty rare that like the school straight up says, we are certainly considering our interim head coach for the full-time position. A lot of times we have to decipher that. Like, hey, is this just someone to get them through the year? Or is this someone, if they win a lot, that they might consider? It's pretty crazy. But we have seen people go home after contentious exits. I mean, Rich Rod going back to West Virginia was something that I think people did not think would ever happen again.
For sure.
And this was scandal. This was different. But if you're a really good offensive mind, if you can win games, people are willing to consider taking you back, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, it's the scandal part is just really hard for me to separate out of this. Like if they're genuinely serious and like they actually make this move, like I think you have to basically have like, you know, in-house compliance and HR like in the building every day, just for people like me who are like, this is crazy, to prove that like all of that's behind you. You're very serious about moving forward. Now on the football side, to your point, great offensive mind. And like, frankly, the offense was not the issue for Arkansas up until they played Notre Dame. Like, they were moving the ball up and down the field freely, and they were able to gain some yards too early on that game against Notre Dame. So, like, I certainly see the intrigue, and especially with the money people who clearly like him and are very familiar. Like, I understand how we get to this point. It is baffling to me, though, how many times coaches can get like multiple chances in this business. And like, this is a lot about Petrino right now because he's the one we're talking about. But you look at some other staffs and it's like, man, they got some guys on there who, like, I don't know if I want my 18, 19, 20-year-old to be influenced by these dudes, but here we are.
Here we are. So that's another job that is open. So right now we've got Stanford, which we keep forgetting is open because they've got an interim all year. UCLA, Virginia Tech, Oklahoma State, and now Arkansas are the jobs that are open for now. There will be more. There will definitely be more. Of that
Me
group,
and you
Joshua,
should apply for some of these jobs, honestly.
we should. A lot of them are the state employee ones. Like, you have to post those jobs. Which is the best job? Is it Arkansas by far, or is that still just a really tough job in the SEC?
I think it's a tough job in the SEC. I think it's going to be attractive because you'll have NIL and you'll be in a place where people want to compete, right? Like, that's the thing about
you have John Calipari taking a lot of that money for the basketball program.
I think if you get the right person in there that can sell a vision, I think you can get some of those dollars. And they've got some big money donors that they can tap on. But like SEC, I feel like is a place where people expect to compete, so it's going to be attractive. There's something about Virginia Tech to me, and I know the ACC is not sexy right now. And like after the Frank Beamer years, like there have been some lean years. I know what that environment is like. I've played.
Lost.
Well, at home, but we went there and won.
Okay,
but
lost
enter Sandman, crazy, right? Like super bought in. That is a rich recruiting area. Like, you've got all the kids in Virginia. You got, DMV kids. Like, you can go up the East Coast. You can go down south. Like, there's a lot of intrigue for me. It just feels like you're at a disadvantage walking into that job in that conference right now.
I will note this week that extra money infusion did get approved. So Virginia Tech is going to a lot of fundraising dollars, and then a lot of money from the school side, the university side, including an increase in student fees over to athletics. So they are expecting to add like $230 million over 4 years. So that's significant because they are trying to show that they can compete, or at least from an institutional standpoint, put more money behind it. We have seen that work at Plus a Good Hire, like in Indiana, where like the school put a lot of money behind it to make sure that football could improve significantly. So we'll track on all of the open jobs for sure. A couple other quick news and notes items. New Orleans got the 2028 College Football Playoff National Championship game. So that's the 2027 season, January 2028. Awesome place for the championship game. Everything's walkable. It's great. Love that. The Big 12 is going to play at Wembley Stadium, Kansas and Arizona State. So a conference game next year, September 19th. So 3 weeks into the season. The Big 12 is going to be the first college football game in England. Thoughts?
I'm 50-50 on the college football international games. Like,
Do you like the NFL ones?
I think it works differently in the NFL. I think the NFL is a sport where you can take it and drop it anywhere, and it has the intrigue. And I feel like part of college football is playing on campus in the regular season. And so like I feel like you lose a part of the sport when you do it. I am not against trying to grow the sport internationally like they've done with the NFL. I do think that there could be some appeal, but like it definitely feels like a different thing than what the NFL has done. So I'll enjoy it. You give me college football anywhere, anytime. I don't care who's playing. Like, I'm watching it, but it certainly is like, I don't know if we want too much of the international college football.
I went on their Zoom call about this, and I asked Brett Yormark about like this not being in week 0. Like if it works, if people are able to manage, the buys and the travel and all of that, would we see more of it? Because right now everyone's kind of just stuck to week 0 because of all the jet lag and the travel. And he said, what we know, right? Well, the Big 12 is different. We're willing to try things that other people are not. Like, they're putting this as a conference game in the middle of the seaon. And so there were a couple of reasons that this is happening. Kansas is giving up a home game for this. They said that due to construction and stuff, they're actually going to be able to make more money off of this game being there with ticket sales and stuff than they would with what their capacity would be available. And then another thing that I think is interesting, or maybe just so far in the weeds that it's interesting, is Brett Yormark says they're not making a lot of money on their international rights right now. And so if they have more games in basketball too, in international places and try to, drum up interest and intrigue in Big 12 sports, that could help them make those more valuable when they sell them. So that was interesting. That to me makes a lot of sense for them to try.
Yeah, no, I think that when you bring that in, like, you're gonna try to exhaust every avenue when it comes to media rights and how much you can sell there. So I totally get what they're trying to do. It feels like a bit of a weird approach to me. And like, unfortunate that basketball isn't like the thing for media rights, because I do think that is a sport where if you take that international, like it's an international sport to begin with. I think people would really love that.
The Big 12 is trying to do that. That is one of their goals. And they also think that, and Yormark's been saying this, that like if you bundle them separately, or unbundle them, I guess, and put basketball rights separately, he thinks they're undervalued for the Big 12. So that's something to keep in mind for next media rights deals, which we're all now media rights experts on. So this makes sense. One other interesting note, I thought this was a really interesting observation from Lane Kiffin. I feel like we have talked about this or similar conversation, especially this season, where it feels like the best teams in the country are in the Big 10, but the SEC has a lot of depth. So like, I'm not even sure who the best team in the SEC is right now, but usually like the winner of Alabama, Georgia is clearly the best team in the country. That's not necessarily the case. So it's just sort of like about where the league is. And Lane Kiffin tells ESPN that he doesn't think that there's going to be dynasties. In my opinion, the dynasties are over. Alabama with Coach Saban and Kirby at Georgia, where they had those rosters year in, year out, and there would be a bunch of wins by 30 points in conference, those days are done. When I was at Alabama, they'd be like, go watch the outside linebackers, and there's 6 of them over there that are first-round picks. That's not going to happen anymore, because if they don't play, then they're going to leave. They can't keep them all anymore. I feel like we have talked about this, the idea of stockpiling talent as being an integral part to some of those runs, certainly at Alabama, because a lot of those championships came before the portal and some of the transfer rules changed. But even at Georgia, I mean, they had, 2-3 deep, better than everybody else. And I think we're seeing that, right? Like the Georgia defense isn't the same that it was when they won national championships, but it's definitely, I think Lane Kiffin is correct. I think that's what's happening in the SEC. Is the talent stockpiling is not the same, and it is dispersed. It's dispersed more throughout the country, but I even think within the SEC, like Ole Miss is also a beneficiary of this. Vanderbilt is a beneficiary of this.
I agree with you. I agree with Lane on the idea of how the rosters are built to be able to compete, right? Like, and this was something I was looking at for my alma mater, where it was the same thing when I was playing. Like, you were lucky if you were starting. If you messed up, like, you're looking over your shoulder because there's so many guys on the roster. And it's not you can't stockpile guys, right? Like, we all understand that. My issue with this is, like, there was one dynasty. Like, and this is no disrespect.
Georgia, you don't count Georgia.
I mean, back to back, like, if they would have won like 3 out of 4, then I would have said dynasty, no doubt. But like the back-to-back thing, not trying to discredit it, that like phenomenal. Alabama was the dynasty, right? Like, Alabama was the SEC run of championships. Go ahead.
Did Clemson have a dynasty during that period? I think you could make the case that there were dueling dynasties for that stretch, like the early CFP era.
Yeah, I mean, I think as many times as Clemson got there,
they were there a lot. They were always in the semifinals.
Right. I think yes. I think you can make
more
that
sustained wins.
For sure. Yeah. But I guess my whole point is, like, there was really only one like great dynasty anyway. And I think the moment that Saban left the game, obviously a lot of changes coincided with that, but like the dynasty also left the game. And this idea of the SEC being the dominant conference that wins the title every year also left. Like, we did this in the group chat one day, but this whole SEC dominance thing, like, literally half of those titles went to Saban, Urban Meyer, and Kirby Smart. And the rest of them were like one-off really good teams, but like that was it. And so I do think part of this conversation now is like the greatest coach that has ever, blown a whistle is on TV now doing a great job over there. Like, what does the sport look like? And it certainly feels more balanced for a lot of different reasons, but also like we start to realize that there are some great coaches in other conferences that might have been boxed out because the greatest one was on a generational run.
Let's talk about one of the coaches from his coaching tree, but who is one of the great coaches in the sport today, and that's Dan Lanning. So Oregon, Penn State, last time we chatted on this pod, it was still in game. So we didn't want to have too many sweeping comments in case that game changes. So this is the watch back. We're gonna hit on Oregon, Penn State, and then Alabama, Georgia, and things that we learned by the conclusion of that game. Oregon had to win in double overtime. They had a pretty convincing lead, and then all of a sudden, Penn State's offense woke up. We saw one of the best passes we've ever seen from Drew Aller. And I think even into the first overtime, kind of felt like Penn State was actually going to win the game. But then Oregon again, Dante Moore was great. Even after the weird, failed 2-point conversion, you get the interception of Drew Aller, which he has done a lot in these big games whenever Penn State's been in a big game the last couple of years. And it's a familiar refrain, right? So Penn State loses a big game, 4-21 now for James Franklin against top 10 teams. Thought he was really introspective in the aftermath. The things he was saying about how this isn't just a narrative, it's factual, it's facts. He likes to focus on all the things that they have done well over the last 11 years, but it's hard. And he understands that they need to win these games. They need to win some of these to change the way that the fans feel, the way that he feels. I thought it was very honest. And then on the other side, you have Oregon, third straight win over top 5 opponent. Dating back to last season, first win over top 5 team on the road. And I mean, this is a really good Oregon team. I think the questions coming into the year were like, okay, maybe it's a reload because, they lost so much to the draft and they're going to be young. They lost Evan Stewart in the preseason and they look really, really good, up to number 2 in the AP poll. So now it goes Ohio State 1, Oregon 2. We've actually got 4 Big Ten teams in there in the top 8 because Penn State only dropped to 7. Indiana slid up to 8, even though they had to eke out the win at Iowa. So Joshua, what do you make of the fallout of the Oregon Penn State game?
Well, I mean, just for that game in and of itself, it was like for Dan Lanning to go into that environment with a relatively inexperienced team and to weather storms and like the comeback and then to have to go into a couple of overtimes to win it. Like, he is the guy. Like, that to me is the model of a guy who you want building your program, a guy who you want recruiting for your program, and a guy who you want on your sideline on game day. So phenomenal there. For Penn State, like, I'm really struggling with reconciling with this. And it's like, it's interesting hearing James Franklin say that he's going to have Jim Knowles like talk to the team about the Ohio State path last year after losing some big games in the regular season and like how it didn't stop them. And this whole, and like, I've almost come to this conclusion for Penn State. Like, this was their best opportunity that we've seen in a long time to win a title, but like, it's a really narrow scope to judge yourself on. And it is exhausting to like only say that 2 games a year matter. So I feel bad in that regard, but like that's become their standard and you have to go out there and win them. I'm curious getting to this AP poll here. Indiana, like, do we feel like they got a lot of credit for eking out a weird win at Kinnick? Like that's the one to me that feels a little bit like out of place here.
I had them still at 11, which is what I had them the week before. So I didn't drop them because it is a hard place to play. And Fernando Mendoza had some incredible throws in that game and a bad interception. But like, I am surprised that they slid up. And again, there were a lot of teams that played each other in that top grouping. Like, I have Alabama significantly higher than the poll ended up having Alabama, because I just think that is a different team than it was in week 1. Yes. So like there's a couple things that are different and strange about how the actual poll worked out, but I'm with you on Indiana. I think it's a good call out because it does stick out there. And the fact that Ole Miss is now up to 4. Like, part of the reason I put Alabama so high is because I don't think Ole Miss is the best team in the SEC.
Agreed.
But they keep
I
winning.
don't think A&M's better than them either.
I know. That's why I think Alabama's better than those teams. Oklahoma hasn't played yet without John Mateer. So, like, some of this stuff is going to work itself out, and we'll see. We will continue to talk about this all season, Joshua, but I do feel like the Drew Aller / Andy Kotelnicki,
yes,
who's to blame? What is the problem with the offense? It's obvious that Drew Aller is not a good fit for the type of offense that Andy Kotelnicki wants to run, because he's 100%. Not mobile. Like, it's not Jalen Daniels. There's also clearly some limitations. I don't think Drew Aller has gotten better year over year, as you would expect for a veteran player and a veteran quarterback. He's played best in games when they're down by a lot and he doesn't have to overthink things. Maybe the play calling changes as well. They've made different coordinator changes. They've brought in different receivers. The constant is Drew Aller. And that's been a problem in a lot of these games. And so I know a lot of the fans are putting it on Drew. I think that there is a mix of the blame and the responsibility for this, because the play calling hasn't helped. And the fact that Nick Singleton has not done really anything this year is not helping either. And yet they also still wanted to split carries basically with him and Kaytron Allen in this game, when Kaytron Allen's playing a lot better. So there were a lot of issues, but Drew Aller is definitely part of the problem.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing for me, because, like, I agree with this idea that I don't think he's progressed the way that you would expect him to. But, like, they brought in wide receivers that were really productive elsewhere, and those guys are not productive at Penn State. And so, like, players have to go out there and execute and make plays. Like, it's always the players for me. But there also comes a point where it's like, you can't run the offense that they run. I have a legitimate issue with that offense. I've had an issue with that offense for a couple of years now. We've talked about it, but they don't call plays in sequence. And I think it's really difficult for everybody to find a rhythm. You can't shift, you can't motion, you can't formation and just like random play call your way into a really good offensive game plan that guys can execute. I don't think it puts anybody in a great position. I also think, just looking at that marriage now between Drew Aller and Andy Kotelnicki, like, it is a terrible marriage. And, like, you see it online right now where they're like, oh, Penn State picked the wrong quarterback. Like, I don't think they picked the wrong quarterback. Like, Drew Aller to me is the guy that you would want to roll with, but not in that offense.
Right. But there's also no way that they were going to play Bo Perbula over him. Like, he had to go pro. That was the only way that was going to happen this year. And that wasn't happening.
No doubt. That's why he transferred. Like, even with that, like, I think if you ask most people which quarterback are you taking, I think they would say Drew Aller. If you're running the right kind of offense for his skill set. Like, that's the biggest, it really is frustrating, like, legitimately frustrating watching that offense try to get up and down the field. So, like, there are a lot of places to put blame. And, like, for all of the people who are Drew Aller apologists, which I was kind of getting there, I think it's also worth stating half of his interceptions a year ago came against Ohio State, Oregon, and Notre Dame. The biggest games, the biggest moments, right? Like, he can't do stuff like that. But I also don't think that you could put him at a disadvantage for 3 whole quarters until he gets to a point where he's like, screw it, I'm throwing it or I'm pulling it down and running it. Like, that was the fourth quarter game plan, and it was really good. Like, he was good in that scenario. And you can't pigeonhole him into having to become that player. It's a bad way to manage a quarterback who's very talented.
We will flip the page and start talking about this weekend's game. But final thoughts on Alabama beating Georgia. Kirby Smart now 1-7 against Alabama.
Man, there's some coaches that just, like, there's a school and a logo.
Like, a logo. There's a color. Like, it's just in the nightmares. Yeah. It
just creeps them out a little bit. And this is where we're at with Kirby. Like, Georgia fans, I think, were particularly frustrated after this one because they think Kalen DeBoer is a bum, which is it's like, that's crazy to me because Kalen DeBoer coached in a national title game. Like, he's a very good coach.
Yeah, he's won a ton of games, and his problem at Alabama has not been coaching in the big games.
Not at all.
Those games well.
It's beating the teams he's supposed to beat. Like,
he's good at beating Georgia so far.
I think there's, like, a genuine sense of frustration from Georgia fans because they're like, oh man, this guy's not from the South, and, like, he can't even coach. They lost to Florida State and we just lost to him. They have a defense problem at Georgia right
Yes.
now, like 100%. I threw this stat in the group chat, and one of the people in there, huge Georgia fan. But Alabama was 13 for 19 on third downs, which means that 19 times in the game they were phenomenal on first and second down.
Wow.
And then 13 times in that game they were booty, trash, buns, ass cheeks on third down. Like that's not a good defense. It's not, you have to get off the field in those situations. So that's an issue. And then I think offensively I think they're a little bit boxed in. I love the way that they ran the ball against Alabama. I also think that their offense is a little bit limited because Gunnar Stockton to me isn't a guy that scares defenses with his ability to drop back on a regular basis.
Did
Did
Stetson Bennett?
Would you say?
Did Stetson Bennett scare defenses with his ability to drop it?
I think he scared defenses when the play got a little bit sideways.
Yeah.
Like he was, it felt like Baker Mayfield in that regard, where he would just it was a never quit type of thing. Yeah.
I will say though, and again, maybe we're going to put too much on it, but the 4th and 6 play against Tennessee, that was pretty great. Gunnar Stockton, right?
It definitely was.
There. It's in there. It's in there.
It is in there, but I just don't know if it's like a set in stone constant thing right now. And all this to say, I think Georgia's still very good, but like it was a glaring, they have some glaring issues right now.
Their defense is clearly not the same as it was when they were winning back-to-back titles. And Kalen DeBoer is, again, 2-0 now against Georgia. Also has jumped all over Georgia's defense in the first half of both of these games. They didn't even score in the second half of this game, and it was enough to win the game. You also had that controversial call where Kirby decides not to kick it on 4th down. You got a thought on that one? I don't
mind him not kicking it. I think that play call is unforgivable. But the idea that you're going to – it's 1 yard. I say this about every team that feels like they should be able to win a title. If you can't get a yard, it is what it is, right?
Yeah,
like that to me is an expectation. But that play call was egregious.
Okay, let's turn the page to week 6. It is time for Imagine That presented by Xfinity. We like to tell you what you might see, or at least, kind of dream out a scenario a little bit. Joshua, why don't you go first?
Yeah, this one is just to kind of spark discussion, but imagine that Miami, Texas Tech, and Iowa State all lose this weekend. So we're talking about 2 conferences in the ACC and the Big 12 where there is this debate throughout the season that people are going to have. How many teams do they get into the college football playoff? Mm-hmm. And so Miami, who I think is one of the best teams in the country, they're only favored by like 6.5 right now. So it's a tight one. If they lose that game, what do we think about the ACC? Probably changes our thoughts on Florida State. But
quick point, it's lower.
Go ahead.
4.5.
Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. 4.5 points. So what do we think about them? Like, we thought we knew about Miami. Maybe we don't. We thought we knew about Florida State. After last weekend, we're like, maybe we don't. So I think there's a conversation there. Same thing with Texas Tech. And I think they're the heaviest favorite out of this group here. But like, they're the team that's rolling, and they spent the money, and it seems like it's working. That defense is playing well. But what happens there if that race becomes a little bit more wide open, which is where I flip over to Iowa State? The other team a lot of people feel confident about. Last time I looked, they're an underdog against Cincinnati. What do you do with that? And so that's kind of the imagine that for me is how will we talk about these conference races and how does that impact their ability to get multiple bids in the playoff?
I like it. Your imagine that last week did not end up holding up. That was maybe a little bit too much faith in Washington's chances against Ohio State, but that was
it was a good primer for how that game kind of went, though.
It was. Okay, so mine is, I'm going to tell you, imagine that the Arch Manning hype train revs back up with a big performance against Florida. This was a game that before the season we had all circled because we're like, oh man, Arch Manning, DJ Lagway. Well, they're in the group of quarterbacks that have been very disappointing considering our preseason expectations. Certainly DJ Lagway. I don't know that anyone would have predicted him having a 5 interception game. He has. Florida is like skating by, like Billy Napier's on the hottest of hot seats. And this game is at the Swamp. Texas is coming off of their actual best performance so far. Again, I get it. It was Sam Houston. But there's some nature of a get-right game, some confidence building for Arch Manning. And this is like the first big opportunity to show that you are definitely not the team that you were when you played Ohio State in week 1. I know Florida's got a decent defense here. They do. They're, that's the one area that I think you can be excited about or happier with. The offense is absolutely inept. So there's got to be something. But what if Arch looks good against it? What if he actually hits his open receivers? What if they scheme up some nice plays for him? What if he runs a little bit and it works? Maybe the confidence spills over. Maybe it kind of changes the season for Texas. Imagine that.
I will not allow myself to get on the Arch Manning hype train after one very good performance. But I know that the media world at large absolutely will. And in particular, folks who cover the NFL and like to drop in randomly on a Saturday with unwarranted and unasked for commentary.
This will be the game that they're watching.
100%. But I think you make a great point. This feels like a game where the first to 10 might win. Like, I think both of these defenses have played pretty well throughout the year. In Florida, in particular, her defense has played well in some bad spots. That offense has not done them a lot of favors. So if he can have a good performance in this game, I do think it would make people feel more confident about his ability to execute down the line. I'm just not going to let myself get back on the hype train.
But the hype train would exist. That was Imagine That presented by Xfinity. Okay, it's time for the walkthrough. We're going to preview 3 of the biggest games of the weekend. We are going to go into 3 different conferences. We're going to start with the SEC. Vanderbilt taking on Alabama, the Tide favored by 10.5 points. This is a game that Alabama lost last year. Diego Pavia's won a bunch of these types of games. I don't think Vanderbilt is sneaking up on anybody this year. So that's good news for Alabama. They're not unranked. So they should be ready for this one, and they know what they're going to expect. Diego Pavia has been talking a little bit coming into this game. He said, I don't know for sure. I don't know what they're doing. I just focus on us, but I know that we've got to bring it for sure. The crowd, I think, is going to be a big factor in the game. But we just got to play within the white lines. If we do that, if we play our game, it won't be close. He's talking, Joshua. Do you like the talk?
No.
I
love
seeing what Tommy Castellanos did all summer, called his shot against Alabama. Might as well.
I guess he did. So maybe that's the key to beating Bama, is just calling your shot. I am a fan of confident players, right? Like, I love players who go in there fearless and they trust themselves and they trust their team. I don't think it's ever a good idea to say that if we play our game, it won't be close. Like, no, like, don't do that. And I hate saying this is a revenge game for Alabama, because like, it's Alabama, and I feel like it's almost beneath them to characterize this as a revenge game, but it certainly feels like a get right game, right? Like, it certainly feels like they're going to get their get back. And so I just wouldn't give them any bulletin board material in a scenario where they already have enough motivation to win this football game.
And they're playing well. They've been playing very well since week 1. Ty Simpson's been really good. I mean, are you concerned about the run game? Alabama
yes, I am.
Game? Okay.
It's been a concern. I mentioned it when they played Wisconsin, but like, they basically just turned the page and said, we're not even going to try to run it on them. Wasn't great against Georgia. So like, that is an issue, but Ty Simpson spinning the rock the way that he is, as long as they catch the freaking ball, like, I have no problems with their pass game.
You want to give me a pick for this one?
Yeah, I'm going with Alabama, and I think that they're going to cover. I think that they have all the motivation that they need in this football game. I love the player Diego Pavia. The personality Diego Pavia is starting to chat me a little bit. But I think Alabama knows exactly what they got to do in this one.
All right, I'm going to take Vanderbilt to cover. As much as I've been really, really high on Alabama, right? And I told you I ranked them really high in the AP poll this week. Diego Pavia's got that it factor. He's got something in him. And Johnny Manziel is going to be at this game wearing a Diego Pavia jersey, and apparently has been mentoring him and telling him not to make the same mistakes that Johnny Manziel makes off the field. He said, I beat them once. Diego's got a chance to beat them twice. That's the kind of shit they built statues for, which, first of all, Diego Pavia has definitely he's close to statue material here for Vanderbilt in the way that we talk about Vanderbilt. But I don't know. I think they're going to be able to keep it close. I think he's going to do absolutely whatever it takes. He's going to, throw his body for extra first downs. I'm going to take them to cover, but Alabama to win. And ready to switch gears, or you got a Johnny Manziel take? Johnny football take?
No, I mean, I'm glad Johnny is telling him all the things not to do. I've got this theory about coaches who were unsuccessful. I would hire them on my staff, and their whole job would be like, hey, what would you do in this situation? I just do the opposite. So I like this marriage here.
Okay. It is funny because it's also like Johnny Manziel is the gold standard of this. He should probably just wear his own jersey to this game. I don't think he needs to wear.
No, he's showing love, and I can appreciate that. Showing love.
All right, Texas Tech at Houston. You mentioned this earlier. Like, this is the biggest spread of the big games of the day because the Red Raiders are they proved something, I think, against Utah. They're maybe the team to beat in the Big 12 right now. Baron Morton is healthy, expected to start. He's back, although Will Hammond was really good as his backup, and especially in that Utah game when he came back. I got to read this to you, Joshua. The Houston Chronicle, this is how they are setting up this story. They have a big feature. It says, Houston versus Texas Tech will be a financial battle of David versus Goliath. Saturday night isn't just a battle of two unbeaten teams. This is going to be a story for the whole Big 12 season. What Texas Tech spent to get the players that they have. I think it's money well spent. We've seen what the D-line and the edge guys have done for this program in the Utah game. But I think that's what's really at stake here is Texas Tech believed that they can upgrade from a talent perspective, speed, strength, size, so that in most of their Big 12 games, they can just kind of bulldoze teams. And then against the really good teams, it'll be close, and then they can hopefully win those games. But I do think that is kind of the storyline here with Houston. I mean, Vegas, analytics, like people are not giving the Cougars much of a chance, but they are undefeated. They are at home. But that's really what this is. Like the rosters are built very differently. They spent very different amounts on building these rosters.
Yeah, no, I'm totally there with you. And like, I tend to agree with Vegas on this one. Like just looking at the construction of Texas Tech, I think they had an idea of what they wanted to do. And up to this point, it looks like they've executed on it. But I think the other thing to me is what they did against Utah was eye-opening in the sense that like that's the standard in the Big 12 of a tough, rugged team that's built from the lines of scrimmage. And they held their own and they took the fight to them. And I think that mentality to me, paired with how they upgraded the talent, is why you feel pretty confident that they're going to go into a game like this and pretty much be able to handle it the way that they need to. So I like Tech here. I think every week it is kind of going to be that like, okay, is there going to be that moment where the shoe drops? Like, is this real? Can we depend on this? But up to this point, they've given me a lot of reasons to believe in what they've built.
Yeah, I'm also going to take them to cover the 11.5. I will point out, though, that Connor Wegman has had quietly like a really nice resurgence at Houston. Seems a lot happier every clip that we see of him. Like it really feels like he's enjoying it and kind of being out of that pressure cooker at A&M. He's completing 61% of his passes, 839 yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception, 4 rushing touchdowns. So big opportunity for him, big stage for him at Houston as well. Last of the big games, Miami versus Florida State. Always a big game, but it's been a while since both teams were ranked. And with the expectations that both of these teams have, Miami is now the favorite in the ACC. Florida State has a path to get to the ACC championship game. It's already been clearly a good bounce back from a terrible 2-win season a year ago, but they are coming off of a loss to Virginia in double overtime on the road. But it's kind of like good timing. I was talking to people in Tallahassee, like they think it's good timing to have Miami in town because it kind of just flushes that loss to Virginia. They don't need to dwell on it too much. They know they've got a big challenge coming. The campus, the town, everyone's really excited for it. Miami's favored by 4.5 points, which feels a little bit low for the way that we feel about these two teams. But it's a really fascinating game because I think, we've talked so much about how Miami has improved its in the trenches, offensive line, defensive line. And you've got a Florida State team coming off of a game where there were a lot of defensive line issues. Virginia rushed for over 200 yards, 4.4 yards per carry. And I think for as good as you feel about Tommy Castellanos, Gus Malzahn coming in as the OC, and that they believe Tony White is the right guy, it was a really good hire, there's definitely more issues on the defensive side. So what does that look like for Carson Beck and company for Miami, but also just the way that they have been able to control games at the line of scrimmage? It's really fascinating. And then again, you just add everything around it and the way that everyone's going to be amped for this. And I think it's clearly the game of the day.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing with the Florida State D-line. We could start right there. Like, do we think they hung the moon? Because when they played Alabama, they were able to dominate the line of scrimmage. And we know now that Alabama is just not a
Can't really
team
run the
that
ball well. Mhm.
right. And so you play a Virginia and you think you've got everything figured out and you don't. And now all of a sudden, you know, like maybe your guys aren't as locked in. Like, I don't know if their D-line is as bad as what that game would say. Maybe they just felt really confident because they beat Alabama up front and then played a bunch of teams that they're supposed to be able to dominate. They're going to take Miami seriously. You and I mention every time we talk about that team, but they might be the best line of scrimmage team in the country on both sides. So you know exactly what you're going up against. I think one of the interesting things here is for Carson Beck. The last time we saw him out there spinning the rock was against Florida, which again, a team that we believe has a solid defense, wet ball. So like you give them a little bit of a pass because all the quarterbacks we talk to just whine when it's wet. But
They like to whine about a lot of things though, but that's one of the top ones.
It's quarterbacking. That's what they do. Anyway, wasn't his best day throwing it, right? And so like there's this question of going up against a legitimate defense, maybe secondary that can cause you some problems. What does he look like? And then on the other side of this, I think for just like the Miami defense aspect of it, like I think they're going to be challenged in a way that they haven't been challenged in a few weeks too. So I like a lot of the stories in this one. I have built myself into a belief that Miami could be the best team in the country at the moment. So I feel like I should pick them to win and cover here. However, I don't feel very good about that.
Okay, I am going to pick them to cover because I do think Florida State's taken great strides this year. But this is going to be the game that decides whether or not they're like a true ACC contender or if it's just going to be like, okay, you're very comfortably in a bowl game. And like clearly like this was a bounce back, but it's not quite CFP level, not quite ACC contention. And listen, the second spot in the ACC right now is like wide open. There's a lot of different teams. We talked about Georgia Tech. Duke has a pretty nice path. They avoid Miami and Florida State in the regular season. Very different than we thought coming into the year. We thought it was going to be Clemson and everybody else. But I think this is going to be the game that separates like a true contender, a true playoff team from Florida State, which is maybe a year away from that, but still having a great year. So I'm going to take Miami to cover in this one, and that we will again, because I keep comparing the Carson Becks we're getting, like 2023 Carson Beck or 2024 Carson Beck. The Florida game was more 24 with the mistakes and just like the way he played. I think we're going to see good Carson Beck in this game against Florida State in a defense that has some opportunities to exploit. Time for our underdog picks. Now, hopefully these records improve as we go in the season. I'm 3-2. You're 2-3 because Oregon gave you a point last week. That was a great one. Great call.
2-2 with the star.
Okay, sorry. That's on our producer, Courtney. Come on. It's got to be 2-2 with an asterisk because he's going to complain about this all year with the
I am
touchdown.
going to whine
the Oklahoma
like
Auburn
a quarterback all year.
Okay, you can whine like a quarterback. Okay, give us your underdog pick this week.
So I'm going to take Mississippi State as an underdog, 14.5 points. They're playing at Texas A&M. So I think that we are in a spot where we have overvalued A&M to a certain degree. And I think we have undervalued Mississippi State at the same time. And so for me watching this one, I actually think that this can be a very close competitive game. I'm not sure anybody thought that Mississippi State was going to be able to take Tennessee to the brink, who we believe is a very good team down there in the SEC. And they did.
And beating the Big 12 reigning champ.
Oh, well, of
Arizona
course
State.
they did. Now, the reigning champ.
I'm saying, like, is that enough in your mind? Like, should they be ranked?
Who?
Mississippi
State?
Yeah,
I mean, as much as we just, kind of backfill teams, like I would say, I think that they're a good football team. And it's really, you're flipping a coin there kind of at the end to try to figure it out. But I think their resume would be enough to rank them.
Okay.
I look at A&M, and obviously the win that they had at Notre Dame is a huge one. Don't take anything away from them on that one. Ball kind of moved up and down the field on them, though. And Marcel Reed, as great as he was, like, thrived off of hitting explosives in that game. And they've got really good wide receivers, and that's what scares me about this pick. But watching how they had to win a week ago is the thing for me that says I think this game can be close, or Mississippi State could actually win it outright.
Hilarious post-game moment too, when Mike Elko got annoyed at all the questions about things that weren't working well, like in the pass game. And he was like, well, I don't want to be like somebody else. Brian Kelly was great. So good. I like that pick. I think that's an under the radar game that is happening this weekend, and definitely has potential to at least cover and keep it interesting. I'm going to take Michigan State plus 11.5 at Nebraska. Now, this is a lot of faith in Aiden Childs and company.
It is a lot.
We saw him grow up in the double overtime win over Boston College, who I contend is a better team than their record reflects. This is a Nebraska team that I think has some flaws. And we saw Michigan and Cincinnati exploit them. I think that Michigan State, will have to play, a really good game. They're a version. But Nebraska is definitely beatable. And I think that Aiden Childs has moxie, whatever you want to call it, in it to come back in a game if they're down. To keep a game close, keep game interesting. And I just think that a lot of the shine is worn off Nebraska with the way that Michigan beat them. Probably should have beat them by a lot more. And now looking back at the Cincinnati game in week 1 and what they were able to do, their O-line has issues.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives me some potential here for Michigan State to get a win, by the way, that would be significant as you're trying to get bowling, you're trying to take that next step under Jonathan Smith. This is the kind of game that you got to look at as winnable. So I don't know if I'm going to pick them to win, but I definitely think they can keep this game close.
We talked about this when we had that Boston College, Michigan State game. With Michigan State's defense, they're like aggressive and super vertical, right? And they want to apply pressure up front. And to your point about Nebraska, like that is going to be a challenge for them. And one thing I don't like about Dylan Raiola is I think he tries to do too much. Like he makes plays more difficult than they need to be. And so if that pocket starts to get a little bit cloudy, now do you start to see him do his best Mahomes where, he's extending plays like in an asinine way and like trying to do, too much cute arm slot stuff. Like that to me is where this thing can get a little bit sideways, because I do think Michigan State's going to come in there and say like, we're already an aggressive team, but we're going to get vertical. We're going to make things cloudy for him. Like we're going to make him move his feet and see if he can beat us, trying to do all of the different quarterback guru stuff that we know he wants to do.
I also think that I'm willing to chalk up some of the issues against USC to playing at like 2 a.m. body clock time.
That's insane.
That was crazy. I also would say that the key to this game is for Michigan State not to revert to who they were early in the year, where they would just kind of collapse in the second half. And they would stop scoring and their opponent would score a lot. That is a key, especially when you're playing Nebraska at home. But I like them to cover here. That's going to be my underdog pick of the week. Hopefully the records get a little bit better in the coming weeks. But
we were bragging so hard in the preseason about how well we did last year.
I know we didn't even keep track. We were better last year. We'll get better this year. Better. I've decided, so on SiriusXM on Mondays when I'm with Chris Budden and Roddy Jones, because Chris has had a bunch of field storms. Like she's had, the fastest one in the history of the field storm, which we should celebrate here on Rushing the Field, Virginia. That was incredible because there was no barrier. The students were right there and they just ran it. But they're going to help me each week look for like a home dog that could rush the field. So we had an interesting debate, Joshua, about like, would Florida do it for Texas? I immediately get a text from my buddy Matt McCall, coached basketball at Florida. And he said, Florida never rushes the field. Like they never did for basketball. They will not for Texas. So we had debates about I'm going to try to come up with some better picks that are places that would be primed to rush.
We
for
should
the name of the
have
pod.
a larger field storm conversation, but I think at a place like Florida, you should not rush the field, even when you beat Texas, because you are Florida.
Well, I think that's what I've been told. They will not. if they beat Texas, they will not. There have been a lot of field storms. Florida State's done it and then had it done to them. We've seen it in a number of places. Lots of fines going around. But I'm going to be better at trying to identify field storms.
How about Lane Kiffin saying we're going to keep the fine money in the pocket so we can buy half of one of LSU's DBs? Pretty good quote out of him.
Not a bad way to think about it. So anyway, next week we'll think of some home dogs that could actually rush the field quite literally if they pull off the upset. But otherwise, this is Rushing the Field, presented by Xfinity. He's Joshua Perry. I'm Nicole Auerbach. We will be back with our overnight show on Saturday night, getting you all caught up on week 6. It's slates like this that maybe don't seem as sexy as the previous weeks that usually give us some craziness. A lot of really interesting games in a lot of different conferences. So cannot wait to watch them and break them all down on the next episode of Rushing the Field. We'll see you Saturday night.